A mutual friend saw his dead mother go from the bedroom towards the bathroom, which was down the living room. She casually stared at him and walked through the bathroom door. What is the creepiest thing that's happened to you personally that made you question reality?
Almost got kidnapped, maybe. I hailed a Lyft because I was too drunk to drive. Car pulled up, I got in and was like, "Take me to 123 Holmes Street." Phone rings. I answer and hear, "I'm your Lyft driver. I just watched you get into a car and that is not your Lyft, you need to get out right now." Neat. "Hey bud, I'm getting a friend to pick me up, thanks anyway." Hopped out at the red light we were stopped at. The driver and I talked about how one of the reasons we didn't have Lyft in my city for a while was because girls were getting kidnapped and forced into human trafficking. So now since these guys can't use ride-share apps, they're preying on drunk girls that they see on the street hailing a ride and just pick them up. Thankfully I got into the front seat because the back might have had a child lock on. Asked the driver to make sure I got into my house before driving away since old creeper had my address. Went to pick up my car the next day and not only did I not get human trafficked, I didn't get a parking ticket either, so that was cool. Definitely a lot more cautious now. It's really weird thinking that might have been a life-destroying event.
We had a cat when I was like 8 that got pregnant. The night she went into labor, my mom made a nest for her in the bathroom. The bathroom was just behind my bedroom and it took all my self-control not to visit her during the night. Instead I stayed up, unable to sleep out of excitement, and read. At about midnight, out of the corner of my eye I saw something move by my doorway. I turned and looked directly at it and immediately got goosebumps. Passing by my doorway was a hooded figure with what looked like a sickle. I was too afraid to move or call for my mom, so after an hour or more I fell asleep clutching my book. When I woke up in the morning, my ma told me the kittens were stillbirths. It's the strangest thing I ever saw. I was not tired at all, I wasn't on drugs or alcohol, being 8 lol, but I saw this figure that looked like death pass my room. Very strange. A friend's mother and father passed away within a few months of each other when we were in our early 20s. While sitting in his living room, a mutual friend saw his dead mother go from the bedroom towards the bathroom, which was down the living room. She casually stared at him and walked through the bathroom door. He noped out of the apartment and sat on the staircase for a few hours waiting for me and the homeowner friend to get back from work. It was in the afternoon and that guy is a teetotaler and was not under any influence. We sometimes did feel a presence around us, but that was the only sighting. I spent 3 weeks in a coma, but didn't realize it. To me it seemed like many years had passed and I remember everything I did while in a coma. Woke up to realize that all those years weren't real, been struggling with reality ever since. I've told this before, but when I was in college, my friends group was rather big, 10 or so of us, and we always went to lunch together at the cafeteria across campus every day. Outside of the atrium, which we had to go through to get to the cafeteria, there are bushes running alongside the pathway, so we're walking to lunch in groups of 2. There were 4 or 5 in the first group and 4 of us, including me, in the trailing group. The first group walks between the bushes and keeps going, but as soon as my group walks between the bushes we all kinda just stop. The most uneasy feeling just effing washes into me and I'm a bit disoriented. The other guys felt it too. Then it kinda hits us all at once that someone is missing, but we can't remember who or anything about them. We do a count and we're all there, but we all are swearing there was one more person that's now just gone. We catch up to the first group and ask them and they have no idea what we're talking about. It's one of the weirdest things to ever happen to me. I believe in the supernatural, but I take an incredibly skeptic view to it, but I can't explain that. Also, in that same area, a lamppost just appeared overnight one time. No one in the group could remember it being there, and we walked that way every single day. The group I was with when whoever it was disappeared took the long way around from then on out. I avoided that area like the plague. Too long, didn't redeem, slightly convinced I can see the future in my dreams. Ever since I was pretty young, maybe 6 or 7, in otherwise normal dreams where reality is pretty warped and the events really don't make sense, I would get these odd moments of pure reality, where I would suddenly appear in a very normal environment that was typically completely unrelated to whatever I had been dreaming about previously. It was like looking through a window. I could see everything through my eyes, but I couldn't physically control my movements. I was just along for the ride in my own head in the dream. When I was very young, I didn't really think this was that weird. I would very occasionally just instinctively know things, like where my assigned seat would be for the new school year, because that's where I was sitting in my dream. I remember this happening very distinctly when I was in middle school. I walked into my biology classroom and sat at my seat, and the scratches in the black lab table exactly correlated to what I had dreamed about a few months prior. It really freaked me out. These dreams started to taper off when I hit my teen years, and I haven't had one in at least 4 years or so. I've tried keeping a dream journal to see if I can verify my dreams against reality, but I always get bored of it and stop doing it in the end. The last one I remember having was me in an empty house getting on my hands and knees to look in the cabinet under the sink. I'm still waiting to see if this one will come true, or if I've just been crazy all these years. When I was 12 or so and still living at my parents' house, I woke up in the middle of the night to pee. I got to the bathroom and heard what sounded like a party going on downstairs. Laughter, music, the sound of glasses being knocked together for a toast, the whole shebang. I thought it was weird that my parents had friends over so late and hadn't told me, but I decided to go and see who was there. Opened the door to the kitchen and the entire downstairs was completely dark and silent, not even a TV on. I was thoroughly confused, but the strangeness of the situation didn't really register, so I never told anyone. Years and years later I mentioned this to my dad and he said he had heard them too. Turns out there used to be a small public bar in their home, which is over 150 years old. I guess some of the patrons decided to hang out for eternity. Not me, but my grandfather. My grandfather had been in World War II and told us about when himself and a few other soldiers had been separated from his unit and were trying to get to Normandy. They had gone through a clearing in a wooded area but had to drop when they heard something approaching. They were on their bellies in low grass when they saw 20 or 30 German soldiers running across the clearing, clearly in a state of panic. Then they just froze in mid-step. He said they resembled statues and that some weren't even touching the ground, and that there was no noise whatsoever, even the birds had gone silent. After a few seconds came a loud noise like metal scraping on concrete, and the frozen soldiers started to become blurry to the point at which they vanished without a trace. This had been reported by all of the soldiers that were present, and all were called to the War Office London after their return to the UK, where they were pressed on what they saw over the period of a few days, and were taken back to the same spot in France shortly after the war had ended. Surprisingly, when they got there were other men sharing the same accommodation who reported similar occurrences in the exact same area. They were all taken to the woods and had to describe where and how the events took place. My granddad had said that the entire area was guarded heavily and that part of the ground was heavily excavated. The strangest thing of all, the other, he said, was that there were hundreds of dogs in the area, just milling around for no apparent reason. They returned to the UK with a gag order ordering them never to speak about any of this. He went back to the same spot in France before he died in 1985 and said that the area had been covered with unmarked warehouses and was guarded by an unusually professional security company. He reckoned they were military. I've tried to find out more about this but can't find any records of it, but I do remember one of the guys who he was with the day he used to come and visit sometimes and referred to the place as the Splintered Woods. When I was 15, I was home alone hanging out upstairs in my bedroom. At the time we had 2 small dogs. I was sitting in my room watching TV when the dogs started going crazy, barking downstairs. It wasn't uncommon for them to bark when a person walked by or came to the door, so I just stayed in my room and thought nothing of it at first. They kept barking, non-stop, for probably about 10 minutes before I finally got fed up and decided to go downstairs to tell them to stop it. The stairs in my house led into the kitchen. As soon as I reached the bottom, I saw him. A very tall man in a pea jacket and top hat stood in the doorway between my kitchen and dining room. I could see no face. I bolted back upstairs and locked myself in the bathroom, where I called my parents. In the time I was waiting for them to come home, I began hearing several seemingly aggravated male voices outside the bathroom door. I was absolutely terrified. Eventually my aunt arrived at my house to check on me. The voices faded and I was able to calm down. About 2 years ago I got a phone call from my mother, telling me she had been reading the local, very small town paper, and there was an article in it about my childhood home, written by the town historian. The house, built in 1805, had once been a local gathering spot for the elite of the small village. The first floor, now the kitchen, dining room and living room, had once been a parlor and tavern of sorts, while the second floor of the house functioned as a dance hall. Things in the house had been rearranged a bit. The staircase, being one of those things, had been moved from what was now a second floor bedroom closet, which would exit downstairs between the kitchen and dining room. My family was slightly aware of this but never had the exact details of it. Very cool, I thought, until my mom continued reading. In 1836 there was an accident. 3 men got into an argument about their differing political views, 2 of them against the other. The disagreement ended with the third man being pushed over the railing at the top of the stairs, landing at the base of the stairs, where he slowly suffered from, and eventually succumbed to, his injuries. The spot where he died was the exact spot I had seen the faceless man in the top hat almost 15 years ago. My mom clipped the news article and my father framed it and hung it in the dining room, right near the doorway into the kitchen. An hour later, while my father was home alone, he heard a crash. Upon investigation, he found the clipped article in its shattered frame, laying face down, 15 feet from where he had hung it. I always knew what I had seen and heard was supernatural. Now you'll never convince me otherwise. You'll also never convince me to stay in that house alone again.
Like and subscribe for more of the darkest Reddit confessions.